Welcome to Voice for Infection Prevention, where we explore the latest developments, challenges, and insights in the field of infection prevention and control. With a passion for promoting patient safety and healthcare excellence, we're excited to bring you engaging discussions with experts, leaders, and innovators in the field. So whether you're a seasoned professional or just beginning your journey in infection prevention, welcome to the conversation. This is Voice for Infection Prevention.
Welcome back to Voice for Infection Prevention. Today's episode is a little different from the conversations we usually have, and I'm excited to share that with you. Instead of focusing on one individual career journey, this episode's centered on a practical resource and a broader effort to support infection preventionists across the country. I'm joined by Alisha Sheffield and Lauren Musil, two infection preventionists from Nebraska Medicine, whose work has expanded beyond the traditional hospital-based infection prevention role into grant-funded education, tool development, and resource support designed specifically for infection prevention professionals, especially those working in smaller, under-resourced, or more isolated settings. In this conversation, we talk about how their work evolved out of the pandemic and what they've learned about the needs of today's infection prevention workforce, and how their team has built tools and educational resources to help bridge some very real gaps in onboarding, training, and day-to-day support. This is a really valuable discussion for anyone who has ever felt overwhelmed by the scope of infection prevention, struggled to find practical guidance, or wondered how we can better support both new and experienced IPs in the field. If you're interested in the future of infection prevention education, accessible resources, and the kinds of innovation that can help strengthen the profession as a whole, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. Let's dive in.
I'm Alisha. I'm a nurse by background. I actually started my career in the operating room in pre-op and PACU area, small ambulatory surgery facility. So we did our own device reprocessing as well. From there, I took over their infection prevention and control program because they just needed a nurse to take over the program. So I kind of did dual duty for a while, did that for a number of years, and then moved to a larger academic medical center at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, and have been there for about the past decade. So overall, I've been an IP for about 15 years now, a nurse for over 20.
And then what's your current title?
Infection preventionist.
All right. So Lauren Musil, I'm also an infection preventionist, and I'm a registered nurse by background. I started off my career working for a neurology and neurosurgery med-surg unit. So would take care of a lot of, neurologic problems, post-surgical neurosurgery patients. And then after about 2 years at our facility, we have the Nebraska Biocontainment Unit. And so I joined the Nebraska Biocontainment Unit as a registered nurse and was a part of that team. So at that time, that was really looking at, preparing for if we were ever to activate the biocontainment unit and what your role would look like in a special pathogens response. So that is really what started to intrigue my infectious disease knowledge, was working as part of that team. And then I joined our infection prevention department in 2018 and then joined this grant team in 2021. And my current title is an infection preventionist for the CDC grant that we are working on right now.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Can you give me a little more context as far as how Nebraska Medicine is structured? So how many people are on your team? What is your total responsibility as far as either campuses or bed count? And then, yes, how many workers do you have, and then who do you report to? I guess, what's that structure look like?
So Nebraska Medicine's maybe a little bit different because we do have a number of grant teams, not just our grant team, but you have like the inpatient infection prevention program, which Alisha can keep me honest, but I want to say it is 5 or 6 infection preventionists, a data analyst, an infection prevention manager, and then the admin assistant is the setup of it. Our facility is around 700 inpatient beds on our main campus. And then as far as reporting structure for our inpatient infection control, they report to quality. But UNMC is a little unique because we also have a number of like international groups and grant projects that use infection preventionists to do infection prevention work across the country. in the state of Nebraska and then globally as well.
Okay. Now, are you guys part of the inpatient team, or are you guys explain your role and then how you guys kind of fell into that spot?
Yeah, so Lauren and I both were part of the inpatient team. And then as needs evolved and opportunities appeared, Lauren and I both shifted our FTE to the grant world. Lauren went first, and then a few years later, I joined the grant. So we have close contacts with the inpatient infection prevention team, but our work now is very different.
Okay, so this is a new world to me, and I think it's going to be a new world to a lot of the people that we're going to have listening to this. So, how did this opportunity present itself? If you go into just how it happened, and then, well, let's start there.
So, I mean, with a lot of things, this current project that we've been working on evolved out of the COVID pandemic. So, our facility, our university and hospital applied for a grant opportunity through the CDC that was called the National Infection Control Strengthening Initiative, or NICS grant. And that grant was really looking at how can we help infection preventionists post-pandemic to improve infection prevention practice and use technology to help, support IPs who maybe do not have the same number of, resources and knowledge that, your large academic medical centers have.
Tell me, all right, how long have you been working under this grant?
So I joined this grant team in January of 2021, and over that time have worked on various projects, all in support of infection preventionists. So we have a ton of outputs that have come out of that. And then Alisha, you joined the grant team in, you tell me.
July of 2022.
Okay. Now, were either of you involved with the grant writing process, or is that a totally different deal from what you guys would?
We were not. So we were poached, for lack of a better term, from our emergency preparedness director, who is, our fearless leader in this grant world. So her and then the grants writing team through the university were a part of that application process, as well as we have, some of the other principal investigators, our microbiologists, PhDs, and infectious disease physicians.
Now, for these grant projects, do they assign a certain number of people to work on them, or is it up to the hospital, or how is it decided, I guess, what your team?
Yeah, it is up to the principal investigators to, write what their work plan is and then determine what they want those teams to look like. So there's typically, at least in our experience, I haven't worked on, thousands of grants or anything, but in our experience, it's up to the principal investigator. The CDC and, the grant funders are not dictating that typically.
I have people that I talk to all the time that have expressed interest in doing something very similar to this. But from what it sounds like, in order to get this opportunity, you kind of have to be employed at a academic medical center or somebody that's involved with this grant work in order to get assigned. Is that fair to say, or are there other ways to get in on grants?
So in our experience, it's certainly easier when you come from an academic medical center because you typically have whole teams dedicated to grant writing. But that is not to say that it's impossible. There's certainly a number of organizations who can do it. And, you could have individual responses. The grants that we typically apply for are posted onto the federal website. It's called a notice of funding opportunity, and then anyone can apply. So specific to our work through Project First Line, we know that we are an academic partner. And then there's also, national partners like the American Academy of Pediatrics and other organizations who do that. And then there are state health departments and stuff who apply as well. Outside of those grants, there's certainly a number of companies and, private institutions that offer grants as well that people could apply for.
Yeah, but your employer is totally behind you and is essentially sponsoring this work from right. So that's awesome. So let's jump into the actual work you're doing. I mean, Project First Line, I know has been mentioned, and then I'm sure you've done some other things as well. But can you guys just go into kind of where you've been spending your time lately and what you've found?
I think, what we've done in the past few years, there's so many things and it's hard to pinpoint, but like Lauren said, it all really focuses on how we can support the infection preventionists and essentially the lone IP, the IP that's out there in some of those rural or under-resourced areas that don't have the access to the ID physician that they can call and be like, hey, I have a question, or, to the quality leadership, how do we, move things through the facility? And so we actually conducted a couple needs assessments a few years back to really determine what the IPs were needing and what they were wanting. We sent it out across the United States. And we had a pretty good response. We sent it out to both infection preventionists and HAI-AR coordinators across the United States. And that really kind of informed some of our work to assess where the needs are for the IPs. And, in full transparency, none of it surprised us. There was needs for education. There was burnout due to serving in multiple roles. There was a desire to have access to resources and, not understanding where do I go to get the resources. I'm a new IP. I was thrust into this position. I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm missing, all that kind of stuff. So we have kind of a whole suite of resources that have evolved over the past few years. And I'll talk a little bit about them, but I could take up the entire time, talking about them. So I'll try and be brief, and I'll let Lauren chime in too. But our first one, and this is kind of Lauren's baby, was a self-led infection control evaluation. And actually, Lauren is the basic, like she started this from the get-go. So I'm going to let Lauren describe that, and then we can go into our other resources next.
Okay. So yeah, again, to be brief, so SLICE is an online assessment tool. That really was the first, project that came out of the grant. And it was how do we use technology? So a free online platform to help lone infection preventionists. So it's a way that these IPs can evaluate their infection prevention programs. We essentially took at the origination 14 domains that are really foundational to infection prevention programs and gave them an opportunity to evaluate their IPC programs. And then it generates a summary report. So they have areas of opportunity for improvement, gives them kind of an actionable workbook that they can go off of. And the goal of that was this IP is alone. They maybe are new to the role. We know that turnover is enormous in all of infection prevention. And so how are we going to create a tool that is essentially like an IP consultation virtually?
Awesome. And is this like public? Can people access this? Is something you pay for? Where can we find
Yep.
this?
So we can send you all of the links, but it's at ipslice.nebraskamed.com. And it is a completely free resource at this time. And that is something that, like Alisha and I were very passionate about, was to providing equitable resources to infection preventionists, because to be compliant in infection prevention is often really expensive and not attainable for a lot of these facilities, particularly in those rural and critical access centers where infection prevention is maybe just not prioritized in the fiscal budget like it is elsewhere. And I mean, I think you could make the argument that it is not prioritized in many places.
So have you got, are a lot of people using this? Obviously it sounds like a great tool. So I'm curious if you guys had the, popularity is not the right word, but have people found it?
Yeah, people have found it. We have been presenting on SLICE since it was released in the summer of 2022, fall of 2022. So to date, we have over 500 users in SLICE who've completed, thousands of assessments.
But that was 2022. When did that complete, or is that an ongoing?
It's ongoing. How do you have a stagnant product in infection prevention? Really hard because, it is, you have to evolve with changing guidelines. Your programs are dependent upon updated guidelines, updates in practices, updates, in regulation, things like that. So an evolving issue, in full transparency in the changing landscape of federal funding right now, the future of SLICE and all of our projects is up in the air. Our organization is actively looking for ways to continue this infection prevention at Nebraska Medicine, given our background with our biocontainment unit, with special pathogens programs, is really committed to infection prevention practice. But, all of these things come at a cost. So we are actively looking for ways that we can continue this work to support infection preventionists.
Okay, so that's called SLICE, yes. Correct? Okay, so SLICE, was that the first rollout?
That was our first presentation into this. And again, I could talk about it for forever, but other great things about SLICE is that it also gives the IPs dashboards to evaluate their progress over time. It allows them to compare assessments. So we really think, in addition to just having the gut knowledge, it also provides a user-friendly tool that really helps people to improve over time. It's not just a stagnant tool that is, pen and paper, you take this, you see what questions you miss. It's really intended to help make actionable change.
You've got a lot of projects, it sounds like. So what's the next
All
one?
right, Alisha.
Yeah. So, based on SLICE, it was really hard, especially coming from a medical center where we collaborated so well with the team, to give someone a tool and say, you need to improve your CAUTI program, and here's some resources to look it up, because people have more questions than that. And so tagging along with SLICE, we wanted to implement some sort of consultation program where we can consult with IPs who need help. We did that for a while, but quickly learned that most of the IPs were asking the same questions, whether they were in Wisconsin, Wyoming, it didn't matter. They had similar questions. And we could really only reach one IP at a time, or one IP team at a time. And so we were trying to figure out how to scale that to a broader audience, which created the webinar series. So our team also puts together a webinar. It started out monthly, but now it's moved to every other month, where we cover topics related to SLICE domains. So we have a topic on CAUTI, on CLABSI, on environment of care, device reprocessing, a handful of topics. The live webinars, IPs can also get a CE for them. And they can also get CIC. What are they called?
IPUs.
Yep. IPUs, yes, for those. So those have been widely popular. We've kind of evolved a little bit based on need. Every now and then, if we're looking for more topics, we throw in a poll to see what IPs are wanting to learn about, and then we adjust our schedule based on that. And the unique thing that we do, because we did not want to lose the one-on-one touch with the IPs that are out there, is that after every webinar, we have 30 minutes of what we call office hours. And it usually actually runs about an hour, but it's where IPs can stay on the session, they can unmute themselves, and they can just talk with myself, with Lauren, or any other people that we have invited to be guest speakers with our office hours. And, Lauren and I are very transparent that we don't have the answers to everything, but we have a really good suite of resources and people that we can ask so that we are able to follow up. Our partners at the CDC have been amazing as a resource when we don't, know the answers to some of those questions. So it's really created a platform where IPs can come and network and collaborate and just kind of throw some ideas around. The webinars are a very heavy lift. So as our funding started decreasing, we had to decrease it to every other month, but we still offer office hours every single month. So on the months we don't have a webinar topic, we just open it up for office hours, and, come join us and chit chat with us for an hour about your infection prevention concerns. I would say, Lauren, and you could let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure every office hours has gone over the hour time frame because people have a lot of questions. And, I think they appreciate hearing what people in different parts of the country are doing. So that is that. And all of those recordings are available on our website as well. If people like, oh, I missed the CAUTI one, they can go on our website and watch it. But the other thing that has been widely popular that was just released is we call it our Infection Preventionist Survival Guide. And it is the 90-day survival guide, or 12 weeks, plus or minus, that steps the infection prevention. It's geared toward a new infection preventionist, and it steps them through everything they need to know in their first 90 days as an infection preventionist. Because we know a lot of the IPs now are working as another job, as an OR nurse or whatever, and then the facility says, hey, I need you to take on the IP role, and they don't even know what that means or what that looks like. I remember pretty specifically when they told me I need to be an IP, I'm like, sure, just give me my checklist. And they laugh. They're like, there is no checklist for this job. Like, you just have to figure it out. So this is basically the checklist that I wanted on day one. Each week covers a different set of topics. It covers, anything you can think of that you need for a new IP, the HAIs, device reprocessing, environment of care, MDROs. I'm trying to think just topics off the top of my head, but, and it looks at, the background of the information, specifically what the IP needs to know.
It also looks at like what the IP's role is within each topic. So, there's certain things where your IP is not going and reprocessing an endoscope. So what is the infection preventionist role in semi-critical device reprocessing? And then, what are some key questions that they need to consider as like a new IP? I just learned all this information about semi-critical devices. What questions do I need to be thinking about as I learn more about this topic? And as I am starting to chat with, managers and employees in these departments so that I can really, have like a holistic view of what's going on in these departments and what my role is within the facility at large.
Now, let me ask something, because there's so much to infection prevention, and it's often, everybody describes it as kind of drinking out of a water hose or a fire hydrant or something. And like, I'm curious, how extensive or long is this 90-day survival guide?
12 weeks. And it was like Alisha and I's brain dump. So like, what is like everything we experience? What order do we think like somebody who's new to the role may think about stuff? And then Alisha and I are both nurses. So like, how do we put information in a way that is like helpful to people who maybe don't come from a clinical background as well? And we've gotten great feedback from people who have, but the survival guide in total, again, it's intended to take about 12 weeks, and it's self-paced. Like, you do what you need to do to get through it. It's a resource for you. But it's about 350 pages of content. And
Wow.
Content, like it is not like full pages of diagrams or anything. It is content.
Yeah, I was curious because when I read the name, I guess in my head, I imagine kind of like a 5-page,
Sure.
like just clean, whatever. And then I'm just like, I just don't know how that'd be possible. And then the way you're describing, I'm like, okay, there's a lot more.
It is, yeah. So it's in a workbook format. Again, this is a free resource, and we're very passionate about providing, cost-efficient resources to people. So a free resource that's available on our website, and we'll send you the link to that as well. But highly encourage people.
Definitely send me all that information. We'll get that pushed everywhere, and then I'll link to on this video and podcast as well. But that's great. You guys are doing a lot of work, and you present on this. Obviously you have your monthly or bi-monthly webinars now, but you've presented on this at APIC conferences, I imagine, different things.
We presented the SLICE tool at APIC last session. So not this last summer, but the summer before. And, our really spin on it is that, so SLICE alone is a great tool, but one thing that we find IPs do a lot is they like find this checklist online, and then they are just like roughing it with a checklist that does not fully meet their needs. And so the goal of our presentation at APIC that year was really to say, like, as an IP, we want you to be efficient and effective in your practice. Don't like muddy your way through like bad tools or tools that are not like meeting your needs. Either, take tools that are good and you like add to them to make them the tools that you need to make yourself more effective in your practice. So that was one presentation that we did. And then, we visit local APIC chapters frequently to talk about our tools and resources. We presented at the CSTE conference this summer. So really getting in front of public health practitioners and leaders. And we've presented, with the American Hospital Association, the American Nurses Associations, the American Academy of Pediatrics. So we've kind of made the rounds, both in marketing and in partnering for presentations to get out to frontline healthcare workers.
Does this grant that you're working off of, does it have an end date? Obviously there's all sorts of things in the air with the current administration and how things are being funded and pushed, but take that aside, was there an end date for this, or was it kind of an ongoing thing, or what?
Our original end date. So when we first had our grant funding, that original grant evolved into a new grant. So we kind of had like continuous work over the last 5 years. The grant that we are on right now was supposed to end in 2027, but that has been backdated actually to the end of this month from the federal government this year. So this work and the way that we are doing it currently will change. Our organization is still figuring stuff out, but we're trying to find solutions where we can continue this work in one way or another. And, that may look like pivoting to like include other topics, like maybe special pathogens, maybe biopreparedness, which IPs are really thirsty for that information as well. Our leadership is working really hard, so we hope that we're able to continue this in some fashion.
Great. Yeah, I hope you guys are too. I'm sorry.
That's the reality of the situation currently.
Yeah. And if there's anything we could do on our end to continue supporting it and pushing people to it or whatever, definitely be in touch.
Yeah.
But no, that's exciting. This is a good tool. I think I'm a little bit familiar with the 90-day survival guide. Obviously I didn't realize it was as exhaustive as what you mentioned, but Slice is new to me too. And the fact that it's all free, it's phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to everybody hearing this and then also being able to speak to it in all of my conversations.
We do have two other lanes that I won't spend too much time on. One is that we spent time, our team spent time developing an XR module, so extended reality module, where you could do like education, in those like virtual headsets, like an Oculus or something similar. Or you could do it on the laptop. And these are looking at, a virtual reality of the sterile processing department. So that was another cool project that, was intended to really help IPs familiarize themselves with the space. Because if you were to tell, bedside nurse Lauren, be like, oh, go evaluate the sterile processing department as a new IP, I'd be like, what? I'm so uncomfortable. I don't even know what I'm going to look for, So the goal of that was really to do that. And then we also created a resource repository of free resources, checklists, policy templates, audit templates, things like that to help IPs, take those documents and then modify them to meet their needs.
So do all these things we're working on, do they exist independently, or are all these things found in like a big collection on one webpage?
Yeah, they're all available on our website. If you go to IPC Support Center, you can choose from survival guide, resource repository, webinar, XR. So you can kind of see all of it in one. The thing that we really found that was interesting about all of it is they all support each other and they all uplift each other. So in our survival guide, we refer to our resource repository. During our webinar is how we develop a lot of our resources to support our webinars. So it all kind of comes together. So I think to really get the full benefit of what we do would be to use Slice, attend our webinars, and dive into our resource repository. I mean, just kind of all of it, really to make you a well-rounded IP.
And is this something that's valuable? I mean, obviously somebody has no idea what they're doing. It's going to be super, super helpful. But like, is this a resource that's going to be just as valuable to somebody that's worked in it for 15 years as it is somebody that's day one? I mean, was it designed with that in mind?
I would say that like all of our stuff has been designed with like, how can you like bridge that gap? Like, how do you support the new IP? They need support. How do we support them? But then we've received great feedback from, IPs with like 15, 20 plus years of experience who are like, wow, this is a great tool. I wish I had this when I was young. Or wow, this is so great. I've never thought to ask that question, or like something like that. So like within Slice, you have like your standard assessment, and then there's branching logic and stuff included. So it's like just as an example, do not have a policy on like reprocessing failure events or something. But what would you look like if you were to develop a protocol to address reprocessing failure? And then it has all of these things based off of guidelines and standards on the steps you would take if a reprocessing failure were to occur. So you have things like that where, some people don't have access to that stuff. If somebody doesn't have access to Amy or doesn't have a budget, it makes it hard to be compliant with some of those things. And then, we've received feedback of maybe they don't need it, but they are the manager of their infection prevention department, and they're really struggling with how they onboard people. Now they have the 90-day survival guide. They have Slice. They have these resources that they can point their IPs to. And they're like, it takes something off of their plate to where they can really be more of a mentor role instead of figuring out how do you train somebody on everything that they've learned over the last decade plus.
I mean, these are all questions that I hear like on a daily basis, as far as from the IP or from the hiring manager or director. So I don't know how to get this person up to speed. Like, I just don't have the capacity or the time. So, I mean, you guys are definitely providing a really good solution to a very common problem. So that's awesome. I mean, that's great.
Thanks. Yeah. When we essentially took, the grant writing and like what we were trying to do, it's like, well, how do we support infection preventionists? So we created, and it's like available on our website, but you see essentially like this hub model of like the IPC support center. And then you have Slice, you have resources, you have webinars, you have one-on-one time, people can email us. And we're happy to do one-on-one sessions if people have questions. And really, it was intended to meet that need, especially, for APIC is an excellent resource for people, but is cost prohibitive for a lot of people great for networking. It's
Yeah.
great for that stuff. But, how are we able to take this grant funding, do it for a greater good, and provide those similar resources of, a networking place where people, are not having to spend money to do so, using that grant funding to, mitigate that in the interim.
Is the continued funding, is that just for like updates and progression and then pay for hours to do things, or is it actually costing you guys to host this in its current form?
For Slice, it is quite expensive to operate in full transparency. So we're looking at ways that we can continue that, or, if it were to need to go offline due to like a cessation of funding, how is that being done? So we're partnering, with our facility leadership, with health departments to see if they may have moved forward as well, so Slice can live on. And then our website, we have like a small carry forward that we're going to try and maintain our website, the innovateipc.org, to host that. And then I just to point out that there are 2 other innovations in the grant that Alisha and I are not a part of that are also hosted on that website that people could investigate. But that is the look of that. And then Alisha and I's effort will be moving to some special pathogens work here at the end of this month.
We have visions of if, in a perfect world, that funding would continue and money would never be an issue, of like expanding Slice to meet maybe some more nuanced needs, or to pair it with, you answer a question this way, and as an IP, we recommend this action, or this action. So we have visions for expanding it if it still exists. And then I think as far as like webinars and stuff, there's no shortage of need for topics. And even, we thought about Survival Guide 2.0, what do you need to know after the first 90 days? So there's definitely no shortage of need. It's just, are the funds available?
It continues to blow my mind how many different things you guys are responsible for and involved in, and it just feels impossible to get your arms wrapped around that.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Voice for Infection Prevention. We hope you found our discussions informative and insightful. Remember to subscribe to our podcast for more conversations with experts in the field, and don't forget to leave us a review to let us know what you think. For additional resources and to stay updated on the latest news in infection prevention, visit our website at voiceforip.com. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, stay safe and continue your commitment to excellence in infection prevention.